Well, the team is gathered around the table, sometimes a virtual table, but they're here nonetheless, and this is the Public Square. Welcome to this week's edition. I'm Wayne Shepherd with Dave Zanotti. We have Alan C. Duncan, our producer, here, and Rob Walgate and Melanie Elsey today, Dave.
Well, I'm glad you explained that it's a virtual table, because if we use the sound that I believe we're going to be using shortly, people are going to think we were joined by Elon Musk and by Joe Rogan at the same time.
Yeah, they're not at the same virtual table as we are, right?
No, not at the same table, but we are combining studios today. So Wayne, here's my question. Which is kind of the scarier thought when you open an email from me? It starts off with a story clip and a link from NBC News about climate change. 2, the first lines are, well. Or 3, we need a moment for a Psalm 37, Psalm 73 breath of truth.
My initial thought is, here we go. This is just Dave being Dave on our behalf. So
that's where today's broadcast began. And I have to tell you that I want to start with the Psalm 37, Psalm 73, because for as long as we've been here in this field of service, since 1980, we have hearkened to those passages of Scripture, because it's not unusual to feel overwhelmed in this field, to feel like people who are running against the tide of biblical revelation, people who are running out of step with the Holy Spirit, people who are in direct defiance to the first principles of the Constitution and the Declaration, somehow are gaining the upper hand, somehow have all the momentum, somehow there's a crest of a wave that you feel like you're about to get smashed with, or there's the grinding down problem where you feel like you're basically being ground into powder, because the wearing of so many people who are saying things that you just don't agree with and that you find so difficult. You get to a place where you can just absolutely feel overwhelmed. And so what we do is we give out the prescription of Psalm 37 and Psalm 33 on a regular basis. And we say, take these 2 Psalms and call us in the morning, because they help us get back into perspective. And we'll come to those again by the time we get to the end of the program. But it's a Psalm 37, Psalm 73, this time, not in a moment of discouragement to say, let's keep it in perspective and remember God is in control of all things. But this is more of a place where the Old Testament speaks about man, human beings, humankind, like grass. We grow, we wither, and we fade away. And the universality of our temporary nature, and the fact that that is even more true in regards to the realm of ideas and principles, that bad ideas come and go, but God remains the same. People who choose by their own choice to become bad players come and go, but ultimately evil never triumphs over good. And that sometimes ideas just take on the cosmic nature of Rosanna Dana, the famed SNL character,
right,
portrayed by Gilda Radner, whose famous line was, "Never mind."
No, you don't give it the same panache that she does.
And that's the moment that prompted the email, because Bill Gates, that's Bill, Microsoft Gates, Bill Gates, the multi-billionaire Bill Gates, the man who has dedicated billions of dollars of his empire toward the global warming climate change conflict, and who has inspired governments around the world, including the United States, to invest trillions of dollars of their people's money, in America, of taxpayers' money, trillions of dollars in defeating this existential crisis that is the greatest crisis known to the human race ever. Of all the things we faced, this is the worst. This is the cataclysmic moment. That Bill Gates declared recently, never mind.
Yeah, it was forget about that moment.
Just
we've got
kidding.
Something else to talk about. Yeah, I was just kidding. Just kidding.
He actually refers to that prior viewpoint as the doomsday outlook. And then he moves on to say that this will not lead to humanity's demise.
Because why? Because he says that technology is going to help it to not. So I don't know, which is an interesting take, I suppose.
I've got several books in my library and in our library at the American Policy Roundtable at the American Mission Center where people have made every argument that Bill Gates just made a few days ago in regards to this entire question. And those books were summarily banned, censored, burned by the climate change community. And Bill Gates just gave a summary of some of the very best ones. That argument being one of them. And if you understand the technologies that are coming online, the existential threat is overrated. In addition to that, if you do the math on how many people are killed every year, how many die because of the challenges that could be overcome by them having more energy immediately, and that we can't get through these alternative energy sources, you'd save more lives. I mean, there are so many arguments. But before we get into all the arguments, and because, I mean, we're faced with this amazing, uncomfortable moment. Bill Gates today has come on the right side. He's figured it out.
And he's not saying climate change isn't a problem. He still shares that perspective.
Nor have any of us ever denied that climate change exists. Of course it does.
He's just saying that it will not lead to humanity's demise. He says that people will be able to live and thrive in most places on Earth for the foreseeable future. And despite the concerns on all of the climate hype.
Despite the fact when you look back in the 80s and the 90s, some of the scare tactics that were used to say once we get to the 2020s, 2030s, will there be any ice left? How much will be left? How much will be flooded? So many things. And I think what you saw then in the 2000s and the 2010s is every time there was a weather event, any weather event, the reason that got the blame. Then it wasn't climate change. Then it was a lot more called global warming. Like we had something to do with it. We were part of the problem.
So I don't know. Is there going to be a giant protest of polar bears? I mean, is this about to start a new movement? This is no small change. But let's talk about the methodology. You would think that this would call for sort of a Tony Stark news conference like at the end of Iron Man. Right? I mean, this would be something where everyone across the globe would come. Could you imagine if Bill Gates called a news conference and said, I'm here to say, never mind.
Yeah.
Now, could you imagine all the people?
Well, what I thought of was how it probably sent his staff scurrying, if the boss changed his mind, so now we got to get in line with him.
Can you imagine how vast that staff would be, Wayne? But here's the thing. He didn't go on a television show. Like, he didn't save it for The View. I mean, he didn't wait for the premium media moment of opportunity. He issued a memo to a conference being conducted by the United Nations. He sent a memo. He sent a never mind memo.
It was a 17-page memo, so it's a sort of a long memo, but but a memo nonetheless. Yeah.
That's more than $1 trillion a page. Okay, I mean it's. Can you imagine after all of this, one of the wealthiest people on the planet and the most engaged sends a memo?
Do you expect this to be picked up more in the press in the coming days? In weeks?
What a great question. We waited to cover the story in sort of thinking, well, surely maybe the memo caught everybody by surprise. There's going to be a time. Wayne, I see you shaking your head, right? Have you seen 1,000
I haven't seen a thing about it. No, I haven't seen a single thing. No.
I have a grave concern about what it's going to do to all of the climate journalists that are out there. You sent an article around about 2-3 years ago where this woman is saying, as a climate journalist, I've spent almost my entire life thinking and writing about climate change. And then she goes on to talk about climate anxiety and something called solastalgia, which is a distress caused by environmental change. So I can hear the brain cells clashing inside these people's heads as Bill Gates begins to step back from the precipice on these issues.
Think of the magazine covers that need to change.
Well, and people in the poster business are right now beginning to think that they're going to all lose their jobs. I mean, we're making as much fun of this as we can because it is almost farcical in disbelief. We waited days to get to this story, waiting. And the story that we sent out, the first story that broke on this was at the Associated Press, which conveniently and appropriately mentioned that Bill Gates gives money to the Associated Press.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right? His foundation contributes to the AP. People think that the Associated Press is a group of journalists. No, they're a bunch of people that are collected together to write, who are largely funded now by special interest foundations. But the AP, he broke the story in the AP and it was picked up by NBC News. That's appropriate. And that's the usual pattern on how news flows in this country, in spite of the fact nobody talks about it. AP will break a story where it's safe, and NBC News, which is Comcast, Universal, will pick it up, and then the distribution happens. That's like entry level for a story that people are sniffing around with to see if it should matter. And then you see whether it picks up any steam. How could this story fall flatter than a pancake in the dumpster at IHOP? How could it possibly not be the biggest story in the last 30 years? Bill Gates drops global warming.
Hey, let's take our break. And boy, we jumped in today. We're going to get back after it here in just a few moments, so you stay with us. We're just getting going on the Public Square for today.
Spreading the light of liberty across the land. Now back to the Public Square.
Everybody wants to jump in on this topic today, so let's get right back to it here. I see that hand. Alan, you go ahead.
Well, we're talking about Bill Gates and his fund giving money to media outlets. I found an article. This is not a scripted conversation. We're working on the fly here, but I did find an article that says Bill Gates bankrolled select media outlets to the tune of $319 million, including the UK's Guardian and the BBC. And that's from several years ago. That's from 2021, that article. So it doesn't look like the Associated Press is the only media outlet that the Gates Fund gives money to or has given money to. So you have to wonder, how free are these organizations to say things about Bill Gates if he's funding them? I don't know. I'm just asking the question.
That being said, I wonder if he funds Slate, because there's an article that was just released in Slate that says, respectfully, Bill Gates should shut up. The tech billionaire used to be a fierce climate advocate. What changed? And it's interesting to me is they talk about in that article about Hurricane Melissa that recently happened, strong winds. It was a hurricane. We have hurricanes in the fall in the eastern part of the United States. And now that's being blamed on climate change, Hurricane Melissa and the strong winds. But what's interesting to me is a few years ago, the Mississippi River wasn't wide or deep enough for certain cargo ships to pass through. It was too dry. That was blamed on climate change. However, one of the reasons it was so dry was no hurricanes had formed to set up to dump substantial amounts of rain that had come up through the Gulf that they needed. So I'm like, wait a minute here. Everything that happens in relation to weather patterns is blamed on climate change. That's always, too hot. That's climate change. Oh, too cold. That's climate change. And again, this is going back, if we rewind the tape 50 years, in the 70s, we can all pull out the articles that said we're headed to another ice age. That was the prediction that was about to happen. So I think there's a lot of people confused and pointing at each other.
This astounds me. And this is not feigned disbelief. This truly astounds me. If you had told me the day before this story broke that Bill Gates was going to do this in the way that he was going to do it, I would say, yeah, right. It's the Onion, right? That there's no way that's for real. It's the Wittenberg door, right? I mean, there's no way that it can possibly be anything other than a fake spoof story. It's not possible. And it is. And what's even more amazing is the total silence. The silence. I mean, Slate went ahead and, okay, there's a backhanded slap at the multi-gazillionaire.
Don't expect any checks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, good luck with that. So why Psalm 37, Psalm 73? One is we always like people to read that because it does help us keep things in perspective, that we don't invent right and wrong. We don't control the universe, that we are here temporarily, and this is God's planet. And he's in charge ultimately of all these things. Now, he gave us work to do. All the way back in Genesis chapter 1, work to steward and do the right thing and to see that things are productive, that we are productive, that the earth is productive. We have an intimate role. We're made from dust. We have an intimate relationship and a goal and responsibility to the Creator and the work that he's given us to do on this planet. That's always been a part of a biblical worldview. That goes back to ancient Judaism. It's not just evangelical Christians that are talking about this. This has been the mindset of the revelational worldview, that we have a role here to play. So it certainly is. We should be concerned. We should care. And in our mocking, we don't mean to say that the involvement was a misstep. We all should be involved. What we mean to say is, once again, here is another example of building your science on computerized models, then spending billions of dollars to justify the models. Because eventually the facts catch up with the models. And eventually the truth always catches up with a bad idea. We're not suggesting that Bill Gates is evil. People make their own decisions about that. I'm not suggesting that. But I will tell you that the idea was a flawed idea from the start. And flawed ideas do not bear fruit. They simply don't prevail unless they're being pushed by compulsion. Now, sometimes compulsion is government force. We got to a lot of that. And sometimes compulsion is somebody with money pushing their agenda. We've seen a lot of that. However, whichever of those shoes fits best for the involvement of Bill Gates and his foundation and his allies, that's for them to judge. The point is, they turned. All right, they're not walking in the same path they were walking in before. They have given us a cosmic never mind.
Should he be commended for that?
That's the appropriate question, Wayne. We around here are big believers in this parable of the prodigal son because we've all been prodigals, sons and daughters, every one of us. We do not hold out the voice that says, should have come sooner. We don't want to be the elder sibling in that story. Mm-hmm. We don't want to be the older brother. We want to say, welcome home. Now, I'm sure that Bill Gates is probably not all that interested in hanging out with us.
Yeah, and he hasn't come all the way over either. I mean, we're talking about a shift, but
no, he's got some side strategies that he's starting anyway.
Well, we're going to get there in just a second, but that I think is a very appropriate question, Wayne. I want to just hang there for a second longer.
Okay,
he's very welcome to come on this program, to be welcomed, and he would have been just as welcomed before the memo, just as welcome. I'd be happy to hear the fuller details, because what we're about to turn to now is sort of like page 18, 19, and 20 of the memo, the ones that weren't written, and the obvious reasons why the people that have made a living in Silicon Valley are now moving toward a whole different methodology, a whole different point of view, a whole different mindset as to how they look at energy altogether. And that brings us to the conversation of AI. So we're going to connect some dots. Okay. Here's the way the basic scenario works. Global warming is no longer as important to the folks in Silicon Valley because they have now cast their lot and their future on AI. AI requires so much energy that we must look at every possible source that we can get to get more power. Because if we do not, AI will basically drive the rest of America back to candlelight.
Yeah.
Because they'll take all the power.
Look at what's happening already with data centers around the country, sucking energy.
And this is just the beginning. Alan sent around a video. Alan, what'd you have? One of the energy farms in Ohio alone, I think, was 30,000 acres.
Yeah, it's taking farmland and potentially driving up the cost of energy for the people who live around that in that area, much as we've seen around other parts of the country.
Energy costs are high right now because energy is at an absolute premium. This is a real problem. Now, why is energy at such a premium? Demand. Where's the demand coming from? Guess what? We're not having a housing boom anywhere in the country.
No.
Nobody can afford it from interest rates. We've got new industries coming online. That's true. What are the biggest ones? AI.
Mm-hmm.
What's the biggest energy drain on anything in the history of the human planet? AI. Oh, and who are the companies that have the biggest investment in AI?
The alphabet.
Which alphabet? We got a couple of alphabets going around.
We do have a
Which
couple.
alphabet?
We do. The other thing is when you talk about these data farms, when you talk about these AI centers that are being built across the country, it's also interesting to watch state governments trip over themselves and local governments to try and give them tax breaks and subsidies to set up shop there. And some people are asking the question, does it end up costing more in the long run having them than what you're actually receiving in return because of the job structure and the infrastructure that's there?
So, Wayne, it comes down to Christmas lights or candle lights. Yeah. So we've got. I know we got to get to a break. We want to press this more because it's really blatantly obvious. In fact, it's almost by delay. We're late to the game. This is something that should have been being talked about 10, 12 years ago. But now it's just become more and more manifest. And Americans have a great way of letting the industries just keep going. Get to us when we've got a problem. Hello. Hi. We have a problem. And it's not a little problem. It is a massive problem. Yeah. Our energy grid is already pushed past the ability to produce what needs to happen. And now we have an industry being driven by the richest people in the world from Silicon Valley. And they are saying, give us more power.
Does anybody else struggle with understanding how AI can be that powerful and has that much potential in the future? I mean, I don't understand it.
I don't think I understand it either, Wayne, fully. The thing that amazes me about AI as a concept is we have conversations. This is just one of the many kind of conversations you can have about how it could impact people negatively. There's so many different ways it could potentially impact people negatively in terms of job loss, in terms of to go full crazy, if you get robots with AI in them, what does that mean? Now we're full science fiction. But it's one of those issues where we're driving off the edge of a cliff and wondering if we're going to die when we hit the bottom. Why don't we turn around? Why don't we drive a little slower? It's just amazing to me.
Well, there's amazement around the table here and perhaps in your life as well. We'll continue talking about this, and Dave promises he has a bit of a surprise for us coming up on the program. So that's not to be missed ahead on the Public Square. Anytime you miss us on the radio, check us out online or with our smartphone app, The Public Square, or on YouTube now, The Public Square.
Spreading the light of liberty across the land. Now back to the Public Square.
But it keeps coming up. It keeps coming up where I know I've asked you a couple times. Like,
I'm not working on one.
You're not working on it.
I'm not
Nothing.
working on a phone.
Okay. Have you ever considered it? Has it ever popped into your head? Because you might be the only person that could get people off of the Apple platform.
Well, I can tell you where I think things are going to go. Which is that we're not going to have a phone, or in the traditional sense, what we call a phone will really be an edge node for AI inference, for AI video inference, with some radios to obviously connect to. But essentially you'll have AI on the server side communicating to an AI on your device, formerly known as a phone, and generating real-time video of anything that you could possibly want. And I think that there won't be operating systems, there won't be apps in the future. There won't be operating systems or apps. It'll just be, you've got a device that is there for the screen and audio and for and to put as much AI on the device as possible, so as to minimize the amount of bandwidth that's needed between your edge node device, or formerly known as a phone, and the servers.
So if there's no apps, will they be email platforms, or will you get everything through AI?
You'll get everything through AI.
Everything through AI.
Whatever you can think of, or really whatever the AI can anticipate you might want, it'll show you. That's my prediction for where things end up.
What kind of time frame are we talking about here?
5 or 6 years, something like that.
Well, that was a recent clip from Elon Musk on Joe Rogan's show. Listening to Elon talk about what's going to be at the tip of our fingertips, self-admittedly, I'm addicted to my phone too much as it is. Like, I'm trying to find times where I can put it down for hours at a time. We went somewhere Saturday night, and I didn't have it for like 4.5 hours. And there were multiple people that commented they were proud of me because they noticed I wasn't buried in it. But for him to say that AI is basically going to dictate what we see, what we touch, what we feel, what's in our pocket,
and give you everything you want.
That's what he said.
Everything you think you want, right?
Yeah.
Right, because it's saying it'll anticipate what you want. So it's going to mind read. It's going to, feast off of your habits and thoughts and all. It's just weird.
I knew you people were going to take us here. I knew you. Yes, of course. You hate progress. Yes, of course. You hate artificial intelligence. Yes, you're probably going to tell us that we'll suffocate if we drive in cars because they go too fast and we won't be able to breathe. We've seen all this before.
I don't want to take it too far, but when he made that statement, the image that came to my mind was the snake in the garden. It give you everything you want. Wow. That's...
Well, what's more daunting is he said this technology is going to be here in 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
It's not even
in
my children or grandchildren's at the end of their life. It's now.
Well, the interesting thing is he was saying this is going to replace the phone. A phone is supposed to let you communicate with another human being. So is he saying that's not going to be necessary anymore?
So I shouldn't upgrade to the latest phone, Alan? Can I save some money?
Well, what's interesting to me, though, is we still call it a phone. Yet if you look at a Radio Shack ad from 1992, that was a full page in the newspaper for Christmas, everything on that ad is in your pocket.
Yeah.
Right.
Everything.
It's like calling a car a windshield wiper.
Yeah, you can do it all. So when they talk about what's in store, I mean, what is in store? Can we fathom that?
Right. Well, again, how am I going to be communicating with another person that I might want to communicate with? Is that going to be rolled into the AI?
Maybe it's maybe it's a chip they put in the side of your head and you just think it.
Not my
and
head.
You can communicate.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Someone else's
I'm
head.
sure that's where it's going. I'm sure they
maybe
want
we'll
to.
all have DeLoreans.
You just kind of tap the side of your head and you can, reach out to somebody.
I just watched Back to the Future last night, Rob.
But also too, we are predictable in our behaviors. So we talk about what we think we want, what AI will be able to give us or show us. I mean, we think about the stories we've done in the past where years ago when people, you started using your rewards cards at your store and the store knew basically that a woman was pregnant before she knew based upon what she bought. Whether it be antacids or other things or not buying alcohol anymore, the predictability of all that. So we are predictable in those ways. I mean, recently New York City had a mayoral election and they were talking about how Mamdani, and I know I mispronounced his name accidentally, so that was an accident, not a Saturday Night Live skit like they recently did, but they talked about the social media aspect of it and what people were looking for, and they nailed the algorithms, and that was one of the reasons he was successful in his social media campaign, that it was the best. They knew what people wanted. It was we are predictable. We can't be so predictable.
Well, even from a consumer standpoint, now already, if you're talking about a product, you get ads that show up on your phone. I didn't go looking for ads or sales on a particular item. We're just, you talk about, a refrigerator or a piece of furniture or something, and all of a sudden you've got these specific ads on your phone.
I always grab my wife's phone, DZ, and start saying like Titleist golf balls, new wedges, all I'm hoping it listens.
So let me get rid of a couple of other small pieces of detail because we're going to come to the question in just a second. Wayne, I'm listening to all this conversation and I'm thinking to myself, of course, obviously, people that listen to this broadcast know how much I respect this panel. Each of the individuals, all the people that are participating at the American Policy Roundtable, the American Mission Center, the Public Square, Kids on the Square, Christmas in America. It's my dearest friends. We've been together for a lifetime. Some of the smartest people I know. And I'm watching us over the last several days, weeks, and even in these last moments, struggle trying to define what we're talking about when we use the term AI.
We couldn't have done it with apps and smartphones years ago.
So let's get a little bit of a read. But before we go there, I'm going to forget to bring up something, and I don't want to forget to bring it up. The timing on Mr. Gates' decision, which is most interesting. If you just roll back to the end of the Biden administration, there was someone sitting in the White House who has been in the White House before. If you go all the way back to the Bill Clinton era, at the end of the Clinton administration, John Podesta was the chief of staff for President Clinton. He went on to found the Center for American Progress with George Soros. He went on to be highly engaged in Hillary Clinton's campaign. He ran Hillary Clinton's campaign for the presidency. He was, in fact, a key player in the White House of the Obama administration. He ended up being a key player in the administration of Joe Biden. He's probably been the longest serving almost president in the history of the country. And right to the very last days of the Biden administration, John Podesta assumed a role that John Kerry had, and that he was in charge of writing the checks, if you will, dispensing the money from the Inflation Reduction Act, which really became the Green New Deal. John Podesta was sending out notes across the world to his friends with large checks from American taxpayers to encourage them to continue in their global warming objectives. It was almost, and he stayed writing checks to the very end. Nobody, no camera person, no one from the AP, no one from NBC, no one from any media, Fox News, anyone got the right to go into the White House and ask him questions. Nobody even bothered to try, to the best of our knowledge. Nobody cared. It's almost as if John Podesta knew that very soon the global warming issue would disappear. Because all those people got billions of dollars of our taxpaying money. All to all these countries and all these projects and all these folks. Congress knows now they're trying to claw back. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
But that happened. That really, truly happened. Now, where's Netflix when you need them? All right? This ought to be one of those documentaries about whatever happened to the Green New Deal. And by the way, no one's heard from John Podesta since. Go ahead and Google him. Look for news stories about this guy, this most powerful guy in America for the last 40 years. Where'd he go? Nobody knows. Now, why do I tell you those stories? Because they're real. And because for people who think this hasn't been about shifting wealth from the beginning and using issues and using computer models to build scenarios to frighten people who don't know better and don't know how to get information to counter, and then utilize government to pay your friends and to expand businesses that you're interested in and agendas that you're interested in for political purposes, it's politics, folks. It's the word that everybody hates, politics. That's what this is. That's what it's always been. A little bit of truth and a whole lot of politics. So, Bill Gates drops the sword, drops the shield, and moves off to something else. And what's he moving off to? Well, he's moving off to AI. He and all of his friends. And what do they need now more than anything else? They need power. Reminds me of the Gilded Age. The Gilded Age, right before Teddy Roosevelt became president of the United States, there were two names in the American industry world that made all the difference. There was Rockefeller and there was Vanderbilt. Why were those two names so important? Because Rockefeller controlled all the fuel oil, all the kerosene. If you wanted lights in your home, you needed to light those lamps. This is before the light bulb. And if you wanted that power, you had to get that power through Standard Oil. And if Standard Oil wanted to move the power to you, they had to do it through the Vanderbilt. Then the reason they had to do it through the Vanderbilts is because they controlled the trains. So the two billionaires that controlled the trains and the oil controlled the power.
That deserves some more discussion, and we're going to get after it in just a moment as you stay with us on the Public Square.
We will be right back for more on the Public Square.
Let's return to our panel now. Dave Zanotti, Alan C. Duncan, Rob Walgate, Melanie Elsey, and I'm Wayne Shepherd. And Dave, I'm sorry we had to take that break right there. It was such a crucial point, but let's pick it right up again.
We're talking about the Gilded Age, the time period right before Teddy Roosevelt became president, where two corporations, the railroads and Standard Oil, were controlling both energy and the transportation of energy. And if you wanted to play ball and get energy into your state and your community, your town, you better be nice to Standard Oil and the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts. Well, now we've got a situation where Silicon Valley has decided that their future is AI. Now, we haven't even defined what AI is yet, and I'm not sure that we can because it's still developing. But here's the challenge. Whatever it is they expect it to be, it's going to take all the power that we've got and then some. So what do we do about the immediate crisis? We do provide solutions here. And we would submit that here's one, and it's not like we invented this, but I would say we could coin the term, or the acronym at least, BYOP. All right, you got, bring your own bottle, bring your own this, bring your own power. If an energy company comes to your state and says, we want to build a server farm, the answer should be, great, love to have you. Bring the power with you. And I don't mean like what they're doing across the Midwest, taking up thousands of acres and purchasing or leasing those acres and taking farmland and turning it into solar farms.
Right.
Now, that's not necessarily a horrible idea, but the methodology is really dangerous. When you see thousands of acres suddenly covered with panels and you go, oh, that's Amazon. And it happens to be the case.
Yeah. And you go, what? We got to eat something, right?
Yeah. Well, what about the food? What about the housing? What about okay, excuse me. All right. But that's one way. But that's part of the answer. Amazon's trying to bring their own power. What I would suggest is that we get to a place where these companies are required to build fully licensed, fully monitored, fully understood, and hopefully they will take some of their brilliance, and they are brilliant, and make the safest nuclear power we've ever seen and bring that with them so they're powering their own plants literally on their own property. You put the plant right there on their property. So if they mess it up, they got to deal with it. So you make them accountable for their own power.
Well, in that respect, Bill Gates has already started stepping in that direction because he's acquiring a license from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission for a nuclear power plant out in Wyoming. It's going to be nitrate power where they use sodium solutions to cool.
There's also hydrogen power being discussed as well, Melanie. What I'm suggesting, though, is that we need state laws that get ahead of the billionaires club.
Exactly, right.
That says, listen, we're open to the conversation. BYOP. Don't come in looking for tax subsidies. No, excuse us. If you want to build that massive thing right here, then you're going to have to power it because we're not going to give up the grid. Now, that puts us into a very difficult position when we could do another 3 hours on this. Probably the most powerful agents influencing state legislatures today are the power companies. If you take a look at where do likely scandals come from in state bodies and state legislatures? A lot of times it comes right back to the energy companies. I mean, they're so big, they're so powerful, they have so much money. That's why they have to be regulated right from the start. That's why we have public utilities commissions all over the country, in every state, because that's a lot of power to be given to somebody. I mean, they have the power of life and death in their hands every day when they turn the switch on or off. So this is a great responsibility. So now you've got powerful Silicon Valley coming in. You have the power companies itself, and it starts to sound like the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts again. So we got to wake up and make sure that the public concern and the public interest is genuinely representative. We don't just basically say, oh, they're all nice people, bless their hearts. It's going to be okay.
They're creating jobs.
It's not going to be okay until somebody makes it okay.
If they're creating nuclear power to deal with the AI transitions, why can't we create nuclear power just to take the edge off of our power grids?
And that's why this woman should be governor of a major state. Exactly the right questions. And every Speaker of the House and every president of every state Senate should be asking, wait a second. Why don't we build a better culture based on their interests instead of just basically waiting at their feet? So there is a role for every citizen to play, and this is an opening conversation.
And you did talk about the state legislatures getting ahead of the problem. So many times we see them blinded by dollars that are coming into the state that they're not thinking out 5, 7, 10, 15, 20 years. What will this look like, and how will it impact the people that live in those areas and the surrounding communities? Not to mention the entire state when you're fighting for no one. I haven't heard anyone in the past 10 years say, oh, yep, my electric bill went down. My power bill went down last month. How about you? I mean, it's quite the opposite.
Well, we've talked about the policy. We've talked about the false models. We've talked about the misplaced trust. We've talked about switching horses. We've talked about bring your own power. We've talked about the fact that we as people and citizens can have an impact on this debate to try to shape it for the public and common good, not just for the good of the billionaires club. And they have every right to be billionaires, and they have all the right to make all the more money they want to make, because the only money they make is the money we give them. Yeah. But we have a voice together as well. And that's the great balancing act in America. But I want to just go ahead and sort of, as promised, Wayne, I want to have a little different perspective of this conversation.
Looking forward to it.
Does anybody remember the Tower of Babel?
Not personally, but I read the story, yeah.
Okay. Let's remember that there was a point in time in human experience, as recorded in the Bible, when civilization got together and said, here's a great idea. Let's build a tower to the sky. In essence, the importance of common language to the Tower of Babel, that was the essential reality. They all spoke the same language. There was a control over the words. And because the words were controllable, people were able to move in a unified fashion. And what's the first thing they decided to do? Build a tower of power and control. Now, we know what happened. God saw it, didn't like it. And what did he do? Did God strike the tower down? No. In spite of what your flannel graph may have shown when you were in Sunday school class, God did not strike down the Tower of Babel. Okay. Did the Tower of Babel fall? Well, eventually it fell, but it wasn't a hurricane or an earthquake that came and pushed it down and over. What happened was God chose to confuse the languages of the people and to bring them back to points of division, not necessarily alienation, but division, so that they would go off and build at a much less concentrated level because they couldn't understand each other anymore. The moral of the story is language, a common language. What is AI? AI is an attempt to technologically take control of what words mean everywhere.
Boy, we got to talk more about this, and we will. For most of you, a few of you have to leave us at this time, but the program can be heard in its entirety through the Public Square's smartphone app and at thepublicsquare.com.
We will be right back for more on the Public Square.
All right. I don't know about the rest of you listening, but Dave, I got a shiver when you brought up the Tower of Babel and made that analogy. That's incredible.
Well, let's go to another place in the Bible. Let's go to the first chapter of the book of John. In the beginning was the Word. In the beginning was the Word. Very similar sounding to the first chapter in the book of Genesis in the first verse. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and God spoke, and creation began. There's something about words that are much bigger in reality than simply what you see on a page or what you hear from an artificial voice. Words matter. Words matter to God. Here's a question for you. When do thoughts become words? When do words become thoughts? When do thoughts become words? When do words become thoughts? How significant, how important is the voice inside your head? When do you first remember hearing it? How did you learn the words that now are there? We're talking about the question of human consciousness, our ability to know what is real, to understand, to process, to think. The very process of thought is what we are moving into in this realm of AI.
Yeah.
And this is a very significant question because the God of the Bible and the story of the Bible, the history of the Bible, the account of the Bible is revelation. And what is revelation? It's God's word coming to earth. Now, it almost feels like there's a counter-structure being put together right now that will determine what words are spoken, what words mean, all of it. And whether we're talking machine to machine, machine to person, person to person, there will now be an arbitrating agency that defines the parameters and the reality.
Pretty frightening. Where's conscience in AI? That's a big question. Does all of this point us in the direction of opposing AI? I mean, it seems almost unopposable at this point in time.
The right question, isn't it? Rob, did you want to go somewhere before we get to that one?
Well, no, Wayne talked about it. When you think about conscience, when you think about reality, I mean, I guess it comes down to that control aspect. You want to be in control of your own thoughts. You want to be in control of your own life. You want to have communication with the Almighty. You want that to be the guiding force of your conscience. And it seems like with that AI being present and always trying to define reality, that could be a line you don't want to cross, because I think once you go across it, I'm not sure that you come back from it very easily.
I have mixed feelings because I know that I'm speculating that AI can be used for good in terms of medical research
many benefits,
and things of exploration. But when it comes to the human mind, my concern is we already have a psychological crisis, I think, in what I would call a generation of gullibles, where you believe what you're told just because you see it on social media or told on social media. If AI can begin to shape thought, I mean, Dave, you asked what comes first. You know, the thought is a word, or does the word go into thought? Well, thoughts are words in language. We think in terms of language. And when children are developing words for the first time, when they're from the babies through the toddler stage, you can get to a point where you have a developed receptive vocabulary of 50,000 words in the first 2-3 years, but you're not expressing those yet. You're learning how to speak and express. So how is AI going to interrupt that process? How does it interrupt the process of education and teaching children to read? All of those questions to me come full circle as we think about the human mind and how easily it's influenced by things that are artificial.
Wayne, I realize we have now tipped over the apple cart that will take days of conversation.
With only a few minutes left, right?
We're going to have those days of conversation, and I'll tell you why. This is an existential threat. This is much bigger than global warming and climate change. This is climate change to the human conscience.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, who shall decide? Who should be in control? What voice should we listen to? What thoughts should we accept? There is a group of people that are running fast. Remember Zuckerberg's motto in the beginning of Facebook: move fast and break things.
Move fast and break things, yeah.
This is a group of people that have relentlessly pursued technology and made billions and billions of dollars, which we gave them. I don't fault them for making the money. We gave it to them. The other day I was at a golf course, Rob, and behind us is slow play day, not my happy day, slow play day. Behind us, there were 4 high school students that were playing, and they were in carts, and good athletes, fine young people, no question with them at all. They were pretty far behind us, but finally they caught, because the play was so slow by the time we got to the 18th. It's like a whole golf course was lined up waiting to play. I turned around, I looked at them as they came up. It's the first time they got close to us, and I expected to, wave, say hello, something. They pulled up, stopped. Every one of those people put their heads into their phone and did not look up at all. We did not even exist. They didn't exist to each other. The beautiful day, the wonderful golf course, all of this, they were completely locked in their screens. Now, how many times have we seen this in how many settings all over the country? And it's not just young people.
Yeah, I was going to say it happens to people of all ages.
See, and right. I think our kids, my grandkids will push that away. I think it's going to be the cigarettes of 30 years from now. I think they're going to be the ones that, see
really,
the danger in that. I think they're going to say, wow, look at all these commercials from the past. Look at all these things we see where their heads are buried in technology. I think they're going to push it away.
And we've already seen how lives have been lost because of ChatGPT counseling kids on how to commit suicide, where they think they're talking to a real person. It's just mind-boggling.
And that's where you wonder if Elon Musk's prediction is correct, that the phone is not the future of tech. It's some sort of AI interfacing device. So I hope that the next generation rejects both of those things in the main. And Dave, you brought up the Tower of Babel, and then you brought up the first chapter of the Gospel of John. And in that conversation, I can't help but think of Pentecost. Let's go to the book of Acts. And here you see the Holy Spirit coming upon the followers of Jesus Christ, and it's a reuniting of the human languages. The apostles are able to speak and preach and teach Christ in the language of the people who were there, and they're hearing it. And that was one of the first signs that a lot of those people saw. They said, these people are speaking in our language. We can understand what they're saying, and they're not from where we're from. So there is a sense that there is a unity in this world that we can have, but it's only under the person of Christ and his banner and by the power of the Holy Spirit.
Excellent connection.
Romans chapter 12 tells us that we should be living sacrifices, holy and acceptable to God. And that's a daily process. And that we should not be conformed to the spirit of this age, but to be transformed by the renewed quality of our thinking. What is at risk in this conversation is our minds. Now, Wayne, I know they're going to try to call us Luddites because we're suddenly striking out against AI. No, that's not what we're doing. But we're asking the question about our minds.
The conversation has begun, and we are going to continue it here, and we want to continue it with you. And if you would like to respond to the program, you can do it through our website, thepublicsquare.com. Great conversation today, team. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time here on The Public Square.
The Public Square is a broadcast service of the American Policy Roundtable.